All right, thank you, everyone. We'll let the stragglers come on in. We'll have plenty of time to ask questions and kind of see. Thank you, first of all and foremost, for coming out for this construction-specific focus in Smartsheet from bid to build. In today's session, I'd like to take you through a couple of areas within the construction lifecycle, all the way from creating and managing estimates, leveraging tools like Bluebeam and Smartsheet together, then managing the project operations, and all the way through closeout and reporting. Quick legal slide as usual. Nothing in here is proprietary. It's all core Smartsheet with the exception of Bluebeam, which I think we all know and love well. And we'll go ahead and get this started. So a little bit about me. My name is Chris Mondeau. I am the Director of Solution Engineering at Optimum. What that means is I get to build in Smartsheet every day of the week. So I get to work with construction folks as well as folks across various industries, manufacturing, safety specialties, and more to build solutions inside of their connected ecosystems. Certainly that can be Smartsheet focused, but often we run into tools like Procore, BidTracer, Bluebeam, and more. And we want to create a synthesized tech stack to maximize the investment between applications. A little about my journey in the construction world. I've been working in construction all the way from being a concrete technician, doing slump tests and nuclear density tests on job sites, playing in the dirt, walking thousands of feet through the mud. And then I finally made my way into the office, which was what I thought was the cush job as a BIM detailer and draftsman. It was a nice upgrade for a bit, but I got a little tired of drawing up spools and making dimensions, setting up things for clevis hangers and more. And I was fortunate to work at a location that also did prefabrication. So the spool and BIM department was only a few steps away from going out to the actual prefab for these plumbing and kind of piping components. So I was able to start to see processes and data and workflow from the office to the shop and then throughout the installation in the field within these journeys. Beyond that, we get to see a lot more technologies and the efficiencies and even the inefficiencies that impacts the users, both in the shop, from a foreman on the job site, all the way up to the GCs and the collaboration between trades and services. So we've got a lot of items that we're going to be talking about here. 3 major phases. We're going to be talking about the bid room, specifically around the estimation of components, how to get information from external tools into Smartsheet, how you can manipulate those with some of the core tools and some of the premium tools within the platform. And then we're going to move into the actual operation of the constructions in the field, the collaboration between shop, field users, and the BIM department. And we'll close up on what to do with this information now that you're managing work in more of a cohesive system. So y'all are probably aware of this, but technology is increasing at an increasing rate, not only within construction, but within each department and team users' usage. Every team is using at least 10 plus applications and growing within the construction tech stack. Like we mentioned Procore, FieldWire, the BIM tools, Revit, Autodesk, you name it. You're all familiar with these. And it's only adding to the number of clicks and the pieces of information that have to kind of transfer throughout. I don't expect that to close, and neither does the industry. But what we have seen as a benefit is opening tools like API connections between these programs. That's a way for us to take information from Smartsheet, sync it to Procore, vice versa, sync it to the BidTracer tools, and more. And those are good solutions, but they are still multiple technologies that have to exist, multiple billing points, multiple authentications. Where do I find this drawing? Where do I update the status log? Where do I pull the next sets of revisions? So other ways that we see this in a slight consolidation are larger tool sets like Autodesk or Procore buying up some of these other technologies and consolidating them. But that comes with a higher price tag and an inflexible platform. A lot of the times they're designing you to work the way they want you to work, preventing you from modeling and building out tools or processes that fit and meet your team's demand. There's a lot of tools, there's a lot of technologies, there's a lot of specialty tools within that. And within this area of AI adoption and integrations, there's a bit of redundancy in some of these platforms. So every tool now has an AI layer. They all do very similar things, but it's a disconnected ecosystem. So how can we start to centralize this and really maximize on a flexible format, like tools like Smartsheet, to give you the most value, not only from a cost point, but really from an end user's perspective? Less clicks, more centralized information, better ways to connect these tools together. Here's some of the major ones, again, that we've seen from building out. Things like bid tracer for estimating, Bluebeam if you're doing takeoffs or markups and punch list revisions. During the project scheduling, I'm sure hundreds of you folks are using Primavera or P6 or Microsoft. Some may be using Smartsheet and others. Where we're seeing this now is still a disjointed tech stack where there's a lot of this redundancy and navigational changes throughout. Where these trends are going are into this more AI or augmented reality area. They're slowly becoming adopted. For those who've gone to several trade shows, it's nice and fancy, but we have to get them here and now and accessible to the end users. And by that, there's 1,000 tools in our tool bags, but it doesn't really matter what the tool is. At the end of the day, it needs to be utilized best by the expert wielding that. The guys in the field really are the primary drivers of data, especially with the construction, but between the collaboration with the detailers in the office, the PMs and the PEs, the other subs that you might be working with and more, that's what we want to try to make it easier for those users to help drive the projects forward. Technology shouldn't be the focus of this work. It should be the hands and the boots on the ground actually building these components that we need. So enough of the background, we're going to get technical. So how many here by raise of hands are using some form of digital takeoff right now? Okay, things like bid tracer, raise your hands. Anyone using Autodesk suites? All right. Anyone using Bluebeam predominantly? Excellent. So there's lots of benefits with digital takeoff. Not only is the speed, but it's also being able to leverage some of the advanced tools within those sets. So layers, area regional mapping, some of the count features, creating customized toolboxes to be able to give you more of these feature components for the items that you're marking up. It doesn't end just with on-screen estimating or taking off in Bluebeam. You can use those for document revision management, punch list items, RFI mapping, change orders, pulling items from equipment schedules, and more. When we move to that digital world and are leveraging those premium tools, it's great, but how do you get that information into other applications like Smartsheet, where you can start to manage work or customize the estimates, apply labor rates, and more? You may be leveraging Bluebeam to Excel in this format with some of those live connections, but sometimes Excel doesn't cut it. You have to share to multiple users. It's too big of a file. Maybe it's this really legacy kind of bid estimating template that you have that's shared by the tribal knowledge, and that gap gets further and further as technology changes. And you can't start to leverage some of these new features that are coming out, like some of the AI Analyze or some of these new AI columns that are coming in the future. So that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to walk through what it can build out and leverage a couple segments. So let me switch over, and we'll take a peek. All right. Now, I'm not an estimator, so these accurates and dimensions are not realistic, but I think everyone understands Bluebeam and the way that the markups work from here. So this is a hybridization of plumbing, piping, electrical, fire, whatever nonsense. But the important thing is to leverage markups in a series of toolboxes for the trades or the measurements that you're looking to create. So with a combination of linear dimensions as well as punch items or quantity realms, we're building the markups in the drawing, but more importantly, the markups list. That's what's going to be storing all of the metadata that we're using for ingesting into Smartsheet. Now you can create customized toolboxes for services, size of piping, size of hangers, runs of pipe. If it's drywall, you've got the takeoffs and slopes from there. You can build these toolboxes and save and distribute to team for your trades. We're not going to go into creating toolboxes because this is a Smartsheet presentation, but the important thing is to get the markup list. Once that markup list has been built from doing those takeoffs, you've got a couple of options to get it into Smartsheet. The first one is you can always send it to or sync it to an Excel file, and then you can copy and paste that Excel file, bring it into Smartsheet, or do the direct import. But often you might be doing several iterations of these estimates, revising them over time, making changes, adding new drawings and floor plans with revisions for updates. So I prefer to use Data Shuttle to load this information in. Is anyone familiar with Data Shuttle or have used it before? Not a shameless plug, but I think it's the best tool from Smartsheet because it gives you the ability to tie information from any application in. Great utility. So we'll go through a build at least within here. So I've got a real basic takeoff sheet. This is flat by purpose. There's not really a need or a benefit to customize the import of the information from Bluebeam. In here, essentially what I've got is I'll load in my takeoff from Bluebeam, export that markup list to upload, and we'll come into the connections. And what you can do is you can actually point the attachments to load from that sheet. So in this case, I'm selecting a Smartsheet attachment. You can leverage this to come from OneDrive, Google Drive, Box, or from a Smartsheet sheet itself. That can be loaded in from a form or direct in. And then there's a couple of fields in here that you can do to help upgrade the mapping, not only designate the target. I always like doing a replace workflow because if I'm building a new estimate, I always want the fresh dimensions to go through and process. But you can have primary IDs on those markups to allow you to keep existing items in your takeoff quantities to then add or update, merge and replace, and more. I've got a pretty clean estimate in this case, so I don't need to filter out information, but this would be beneficial if you're focusing on maybe specific floors or areas, or you want to isolate trades that are important to you. You can also do that in the actual raw export from Bluebeam. But of course, the power in Data Shuttle really is being able to map the information between applications. So if you have an estimating sheet with your own various quantities and takeoff columns or named attributes, this gives you a non-technical way to map that information and ingest into the tool. So I've got the markup ID, the item description codes, any of the custom fields that I'm trying into, or some of the feature fields like the floor levels and layers within the Bluebeam run. You can run these on attachment or on a schedule. In this case, I like doing on demand, so we've got this running in the background. And there's some other formatting segments that you can have from here. Now, when I load this into the sheet, it's just going to give me this raw data dump, and that's a good thing, because now we have the information in Smartsheet and available to start to modify and manipulate. Here comes item number 2. So the Bluebeam is your linear takeoff, quants and dimensions. But if you want to associate cost information or labor rate information, you may have your own price book, your unit rates for development. A lot of the BIM tools have those libraries. You can also pull them from Harris Pricing Index or any of the other kind of public libraries or paid libraries loaded in. As many of you might be familiar, those databases are very large, well past the 20,000 row limit that we have in Smartsheet now. So what we can leverage here is the data table function. Is anyone using data table or familiar with what that is? Okay, 2 million rows and more. And these price books have hundreds of thousands of records and are updated, I don't know, real time in some cases. So you can still use Data Shuttle to load those into a data table. And we're not going to do that live in this because it's the same workflow. But this is what data table looks like. It sits at the portfolio of your organization, and it can store millions of rows of information as well as hundreds of thousands of columns of data as well. So you can get really granular with the types of items that you may want to relate with a price book. Again, labor data, rate data. You can even load price books from suppliers or other trade industries or labor resources you have to create a cohesive database for reference information that you might use in your organization. So I've got 2 sources of data. I've got my takeoff from Bluebeam loaded into Smartsheet, and I have my reference information for those items in the takeoff itself. What's next? Well, that's where we're coming in and building an estimate, right? I've got the granular line item quantities from the takeoff. What we can do now is find a way to aggregate it and makes the most sense for an estimator to actually go through and apply, assign vendors, create the breakouts. Everyone has a different flavor of estimating, and et cetera. So I've taken that estimate and takeoff, and I've applied a pivot application to this to help me aggregate it. You can do grouping and reports in Smartsheet if you don't want to use the pivot app from Smartsheet. It gives you a way to kind of group and summarize information to apply this rate information here. So I've got this grouped by floor level, area, and system. This could be done by the fitting type if you so desire, material type. If you have the vendor data from your data table, you can model that in as well. But what I want to showcase in here is aggregating that underlying information from the takeoff sheet into the estimate. And this is where I'm leveraging a data table connection. So data table allows you to apply essentially an index match or a VLOOKUP to that reference information and bring it back into that sheet where you don't have this row limit at the moment. So you apply a lookup based on an item ID or an item name, and that can pull over your unit cost for that item, the crew development rate for the labor, or again, vendor information from the side as part of this lookup information. So now we're able, again, to start building out the estimate, start playing with the numbers, doing kind of what-if scenarios and more. Now, what's next in estimating? Getting quotes from your suppliers, right? I've got X number of items, give me the pricing information. If they give you a default book that you can run off at the beginning of the year, more power to you. You can use a data table to reference that in, but maybe you need to go out to bid and send out invites for additional runs. And that's where you can leverage things like work or update requests and automations. I have this ITB column, at least in this case. I can check that box, save the sheet, and that will send out an invite to maybe one of my preferred suppliers or a series of suppliers for that invitation to give me a quote on that item. Now this can come over either as an email for a single roll if you're doing point, if you want to send the entire sheet for bid and updates. You can create things like collections or shared reports to distribute out to those third parties, allow them to work in that workbook. And the benefit of working in Smartsheet is you don't have to upload or import information in. It's in a live collaboration. So when you're at the nth hour in the bid room trying to get final numbers, it's up to date. So this is an update request for a specific item. Again, I'm just getting the item code, descriptors. They can update their supplier cost for that material if they so desire. Say this is $9 for the fitting. If there's any kind of part files, diagrams that are beneficial to your procurement teams or more, you can ask them from those updates. But that will fill into your supplier cost columns. And again, that can be hand keyed in. It can be sent and or updated with an update request, or if you're using those reference tables, loaded in from there. There's some other tricks that you can do with this to help kind of add visualizations. In this case, I've got some logic in here to help me quickly identify the lowest supplier in this case, if I want to go for that bid. You can have more advanced algorithms if you so desire, but this is try and bring some of that speed and efficiency when you're going through and trying to bid out these packages. So I can see supplier one's the lowest, maybe I want to go and award him for that component. I can rerun that pivot app and basically see new grouping to say, who's going to be the most cost-effective supplier for this range, and then create that award package. From there, you can go further, send out reports, award off the bids, etc. But that's how we can kind of collect that information again from Bluebeam, load into Smartsheet, play with some transforms and looks up, and then go from there. So that concludes the first part of our breakout session here. So we've talked about estimating from intake. We can take that information now and start to move it into the actual life cycle phase of the construction project. All right. One of the more arguably interesting parts of construction, at least for myself, is seeing the work and the projects in motion. So the collaboration from the project office to the detailers to the guys in the shop and into the field. How can we get this information, synthesized and running together? How many folks here do prefabrication in tandem with construction? Okay. And how many are subcontractors or general contractors? I guess that's everyone in this case, so excellent. So this demo is a little bit more tailored towards subcontractors, but you can certainly take elements of this and apply them within the lens of a GC, managing work, sending out updates, and more. You'll see similar elements to tools that you're already using, like Procore or Autodesk Construction Cloud. These are meant to be a replace, it's meant to be a better together story. Working with the teams or subs that may be using Smartsheet or using Smartsheet yourselves to report back into some of these other tools that are anchored within that industry. So some other statistics that you may be aware of, at least in construction, we're seeing a large increase in this prefab work component. So communication between the field, the shop, and the office is more important than ever. Any ways that we can make it easier for the field to communicate increases the speed for redesign or redeployment, hyper shipping or logistics to store on site or in proxies, and then help out that collaboration as these buildings, especially in the design build motion, are changing the ecosystem that we're in. Things that some of these tools do really well and some do really weakly. Procore doesn't do great at prefab tracking or seeing where these spools are at or these assemblies to kind of do installation. It may have weaker scheduling or resourcing components. Some of y'all might have frustrations with that. Anything that it's missing or using other technologies that are adding to this tech stack, as we talked about earlier, can be converted in formats of Smartsheet. And we'll see some high-level samples of it today, again, to show you what that could look like in that art of the possible. So again, let's pop the hood and we will just go right into the demo. All right. So I am leveraging a tool called Control Center from Smartsheet. Is anyone familiar with Control Center? Been in sessions before? So the 10,000-foot view is Control Center is a way to provision a template set, and that template set is your project folder. So it can include things like a schedule, a budget, RFIs, submittals, safety inspection logs, really anything that you need to track and manage work inside that toolkit. We're not going to show the back end of that today because it's a little daunting, but we'll talk about the high-level process. So I've got here just a project intake. This really contains high-level summary information about the project name, location, maybe some estimated start dates, project manager information, budgets, etc. You can think of this as a continuation, or maybe information from the bid room once that project's awarded can make its way into a sheet like this. You can use tools like Data Shuttle to take it from, if you're using Bid Tracer, you're not using this Bluebeam estimating, load it in. If you're using Procore to manage a project sheet, you can use Data Shuttle to load that in as well, or you can just hand key that into this distribution. Once we check a box or set up an approval process, if you're kind of prepping a project for launch, many of you may be using SharePoint or some file system on your network. You're saving that folder as new, renaming all the project files after a project code, etc. This kind of is a similar thing, but you're not copying and pasting a folder. We are creating a project packet via Control Center. In sake of times, we'll just kind of basically say we've clicked the project creation link, but Control Center will take a predefined template and load our project up here. And so this is a potential project dashboard you can have for one of your job sites. Now, you can change the landing page on this if you want to say focus for the guys in the field, or if you want a fabrication user to have a fabrication launch dashboard, or if you want a BIM team to have a BIM dashboard to view their open items, which floors they need to model, which ones they need to update, pending RFIs and change orders to approach, etc. But this is your central console for a project layer. So you've got things like maps for navigation, showing the statuses of RFIs, how the project's performing, pending change orders and their impact on the jobs. Then some additional things like tracking in manpower over time from daily logs. We'll talk about how you can enhance these with AI on the later segment, and similar cases even with safety and monitoring. Generally speaking, any form information or sheet information you can collect can be aggregated in a dashboard like this. Now, in that left rail, this is that project template. So you may see similar things, and you may be using things like this in today. Things like the budgets, change orders, arguably everyone's favorite things like the project schedules where you can start to manage and track work. We'll go through a couple of these at the high level, but I will focus on a few specifically. One more on RFIs. Just in that note, let's raise a series of hands if you hate creating and managing RFIs. How about submittals? Maybe we'll just do a shout. What is the worst thing you hate about managing content in construction management? Change? All right. We'll look at a couple of these, and we'll show you really, again, the purpose. You can create a template in Smartsheet, leverage some of these applications to help automate and bring more efficiencies within. So I have an RFI log. This is a pretty lightweight one, But essentially, you can track and categorize, what is the bit of information we need, who's submitting it, how old is this. We can tie this with automations to automatically update and alert the recipient of having that need or that update for that information. We know that some folks don't always use Smartsheet. Some folks have way too many emails to monitor this. Some folks really prefer it in more of a formal structure. In this case, you can create these customized documents, not only from an email alert, but using the document generation tool from Smartsheet. Raise of hands, who's using the doc gen today? Okay. So a little redundant for the folks here, but if you haven't, definitely explore this. You can use it for things to create custom RFIs, change orders, updates for billing components, setting up schedules or certifications for users, and more. Essentially, what the doc generation does is it takes cell data from your sheet and then gives you the ability to map that into a fillable PDF. I've got a real boilerplate RFI template in this case, but if you have a custom version yourselves, custom branding, attributes, you build in a field mapping tool, save that to your config, and then any kind of automation you would choose to run. In this case, I have just a checkbox to send. That will distribute and automatically attach that to the row where I can view that RFI template with my cell data and then send that out to external users as needed. So it's a great tool to expand the use of Smartsheet from a data collection, but also to send and distribute in different formats for the team. We talked a lot around, RFIs, some of the scheduling components, the dashboard. We didn't really talk about how are we getting information to and from the field and the shop. And this is going to be more for the prefab guys that are using full assemblies to send out, creating spool or batch packages for installation in the field. I'll switch this over to our new table view for a little bit more viewing. Now, the benefit with Smartsheet, of course, is its multi-user collaboration. So if you're a foreman in the job site and you're working on level A, chill water units, or whatever component, it's good to know what's coming down the pipe, as well as letting the project team and the fabrication team know what to build next. How many of that is done just over email, communication, various applications? It's disjointed, it's all over the place. Or it's in sometimes advanced tools. You might be using Revit 360 or any of the field ones to kind of see and manage these. It's not the best for some of these field users where they look quick, fast information to associate and relay back. So I have a version of a spool log, at least in this, and these are more focused on those subcomponents or the assemblies for fabrication and field. But this can give the users in the field some quick insights onto where that work is coming from to prep for work next, change requested delivery dates, which can reach back out to the fabrication managers, and more. A couple things that we can add in. So your BIM team really feeds the data in this as they're building out these spools for production, as well as installation in the field. That's more the raw data, the material lists, the drawings that are associated with those sort of install. Field users are really defining the dates and coordination between the two. But you can add assets in here like the images, the attachments for the shop drawings, cut lists if you're working with the procurement teams, the actual bill of materials that you can get from your CAD files, send over to them for procurement. We'll talk about how that relates back to estimating for actual batch releases and more. But the BIM team can also create these logs, and if you're creating shop drawings or plans for the teams to install, you can actually connect these sheets to the CAD and automatically create QR codes. So if they're drawing their shop prints or their layouts on site, scan that QR code, brings them straight to the actual production item in Smartsheet so they have a real-time track. I don't have a CAD license to show you that live now, but we can talk about that certainly later. But again, showing you some ways that you can kind of have these enhancements in line. By having this standard ID and tracking the spool items, the components, a user will be able to log in, very quickly see what is the work being worked on, request updates for those times, and view the drawings itself. So we'll go through a couple scenarios there from a foreman's perspective. So if I'm looking at floor level area, I can type in that code, search it on the mobile app. I can update and see from a snapshot what are the components that I need. This is more of a fabrication drawing than it is in the field, but it could be your kind of batch layouts in the ISOs for navigation. If I wanted to change the requested date for this item, a user would just come in and then change the requested delivery, save that. That will trigger an alert to the fabrication manager or the production manager to see, this loads up, where I'd like to have this updated. Do they approve or deny that request based on a production schedule? And if that needs to be adjusted or changed within that forecast. So we'll approve that drawing. That will alert our field user, yep, the spool or the batch will be shifted within line and more. We're keeping it light for the guys in the field, right? We don't want them to go click through 1,000 production logs, update schedules where it's not needed as this is driving the work within. Now, maybe from a larger vision, if you're trying to see what floors or areas of work are coming in next, that's where you can switch over to look at the timeline view, and that will give you a more pipeline flow where items are at through the spooling or the BIM department, through procurement, even if we're waiting for materials, as well as fabrication. How many times have the guys in the field ask, where's the next series of pipe? Where's the next areas of supports or units coming over? Is it in the BIM department? Can we escalate those? So these shared schedules can be viewed across these departments. I'm grouping it from the shop, the office, and the field in. But in that timeline view, it gives you different ways to group that tracking, right? This is more of that macro view. But if I wanted to go more down to maybe a fabrication status tracker or a BIM tracker, I can come down and adjust BIM, group it by floor, see which spooler might be working on these, change those areas, and quickly start to kind of identify the workflow or the items that I might need to be working on to see what's coming down that pipe. Again, the information is in this granular format inside of the sheet, giving you the flexibility to kind of change and modify those reports and the visuals to help kind of forecast and manage work. So all this information, again, we've talked about building out these project templates or these toolkits. You have these standard series of objects. You can customize these more how you need, but start to think about what objects are repeatable components for managing your project work. Bundle those in within a project template. You can use Control Center, launch those automatically. It's not a hard requirement. So if you want to create a copy-paste folder, you certainly can. But all these features here are core to the Smartsheet platform. We're centralizing that information in, making it easy, molding it and tailoring it to what you might need for your team and users. All right. So now we're going to move into the data layer and the reporting. All right. So we have all this project information inside of Smartsheet. We're tracking schedules, we're tracking RFIs, punch list items, and more. It's a lot of information that we're collecting from the field. How do we get that and make it more usable for our teams, not only during the project, maybe even at closeout to help revise and reiterate the project in the future? A lot of these things, require multiple different applications. I don't know how many punch list applications or tools are out there in the market today, but they're everywhere. If we're able to synthesize this into a core platform like Smartsheet, we're able to reduce not only the number of clicks, but gain more insights to the information that matters to us, setting these metrics to track over time to help adopt and change our processes. Things like automating closeout notifications to make sure work is fully completed, building out earned value dashboards or tracking progress from plans to actuals to make sure that we're not losing progress on work sooner rather than later. I think the statistic is projects really go south within the first 20% of their life cycle. If we have better insights, real how those are managed, there's more time and flexibility for us to adapt and change to that over time. And the other component can either be live during the projects or back into the estimations phase. How did projects perform? What went well, what went wrong? What projects are similar? So it's increasing the speed and efficacy as well as the accuracy of planning out that project work within. Some other components too may be warranty and closeout. If you're starting up a commissioning or during the service components of some of these buildings or services, how can you maintain that quality of work after it's been completed throughout the rest of the project life cycle? All right. So we are going to pop back into a project-specific template, but we're going to show you a couple of ways and tools that you can build some of these advanced sheets to get some of these more valuable insights. There's two templates that I'd like to show you today for your consideration. One are things that I like to call a timeline sheet. And what these are really good for are tracking a period of data over time. So if you wanted to build things like S-curves and track progress and monitor that as it relates, creating a fixed range of data allows you to track progress within each interval. And what this really is creating a simple log of dates within day 1 through day 30 through day 90, and then you're able to roll up information like manpower or you have the right one for this. We'll swap over to that here in a second. But it gives you the ability to track and summarize the progress over time from a project schedule. So the project schedule is the heartbeat of every construction project. Dates are changing, resources are changing from here, what's going to be impacting from that plan versus the estimate. Building components like these allow you to summarize metrics within a day, so we're now at the most granular level, and you can group and aggregate this by week and more. Now, one of the more valuable ones I would say are a snapshot sheet. And this is leveraging a copy-paste automation. So if you have a calculation sheet that you're using to track, maybe it's the total amount of RFIs or change orders over time, what's the cost, et cetera, you can create a copy row automation. And I'm gonna go into my metadata sheet. So this is my calculation sheet for that project. As you can see, I've got a lot of supplemental information, things like milestone progression tracking, RFIs by category, et cetera. This sheet is doing some of the heavy lifting on those metrics that I'm tracking per project. You can create as many metrics and measures as you want. This is good to pull into a dashboard, but what Smartsheet's not typically great at is showing how those measures change over time. Inside of here is a copy row automation. So I just call the snapshot. You can set this to run daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. Would recommend a little bit of a higher, broader frequency like weekly or monthly, just so we don't hit a 20,000 sheet limit. If your projects don't go more than 20,000 days, you should be okay. But weekly is usually a little bit of a broader segment to be more responsive to that project work. And it's really simple, right? I'm just doing a copy row. And what this will do is it's gonna send every week a snapshot of that information to that snapshot sheet. And you'll see there's mixed metrics here, and that's okay because we're able to leverage things like reports to filter out the scope of this data or the AI analyze charts to kind of get that information as well. So every week we see I'm tracking on-time completes, filtering out that measure, the performance. The data can look dirty, that's okay. But what we're able to do is build out components like a project trends dashboard. And this is just reading information straight from that sheet. Now, if you use the AI charts, you don't have to create a new metric sheet. You don't have to create a series of reports to create these widgets. So it's simplifying your builds in Smartsheet. You don't have to have extras of objects to kind of build out these visualizations. It lightens the admin load and can give you some more valuable trends and insights over time. So these are very kind of trend heavy, at least in these visualizations, but we'll show you how to create a new one right from the snapshot. Has anyone explored the AI tools so far, the AI Analyze? Hopefully after this session, you guys get a chance to go check it out. But it's over here on the right rail. There's 3 AI tools. There's the text and summaries. This is actually pretty useful when it comes to synthesizing information. So if you're looking at creating, maybe it's a recommended toolbox talk or risk mitigation for a safety incident. We'll try to do that here in a second, but arguably one of the more valuable ones is the analyzed data. It will look at the information inside of your sheet and give you recommendations. So I can say, yeah, I want to see how my task completion, if we're completing those based on the original schedule. Let's just check that. And it's going to read the information that's collected in the snapshot and give us a chart. I've got a lot of data in here, so it looks messy, right? Maybe I want to see this grouped by month. Let that churn for a little bit. And I have a cleaner chart. No sheets, no reports, nothing. Now, If I wanted to add this to a dashboard, I can add it right to the dashboard here. I can download it as a snapshot. But if I wanted to keep getting more analytical with my information, all I have to do is just keep talking to this agent, massaging a little bit, giving it some prompts, seeing the recommendations, and more. These snapshot sheets work really well with the AI Analyze because it's providing structured information that you can use to create these queries. And a secondary benefit is because we're doing mixed attributes, you can start looking at cross kind of region information. So I could probably come back and say, let's compare overdue items to punch list items and see what that gives me. And let's do a stacked bar chart. So it doesn't have to be just a linear trend. You can do pie charts, you can do column charts, you can do bar charts, a combination of these things, and again, really flexible. So I know we announced filtered dashboards coming in January. You don't have to wait for content like this, can kind of give you filterable components as you're doing analysis. Now you don't have to just use the AI charts in context for a timeline sheet. It's available for all sheets. So if you have a budget log or if you want to tie directly to the RFI log, it's going to help focus the data and maybe explore some more insights for those tools explicitly. So I definitely urge you to come check these out and play with them a bit more across any of your sheets within. They've gotten much more powerful since the initial launch and will only continue to go so. I'll loop back around to the AI text-based on our safety incident log. Again, you can use these things for toolbox talks or generating at RFIs or RFPs. But let's just take an example here. So slip on wet surface, Jane Doe, what's the action taken? I already have a corrected action, but maybe I'm not great at recommending the next steps. I can come in here, create, generate content. And then what I can do here is say, let's say, you are a safety manager. And identified a risk, we'll say description in this case. So we're pulling data from our sheet. So we found identified description, took action. I can type, recommend a safety plan, and generate. And what this will do is it's going to take information from my sheet and then give me maybe a suggested recommendation for that next work, right? So implement regular floor inspections, ensure cleaning spills, stuff that you may know, and then I can apply that to that cell and that will save it for reporting or use. So you can use this to enhance RFIs. You can use them to address different change orders, help see what might be an impact for a schedule. But it's taking content from your sheet, synthesizing it within some AI components and more. Sneak peek of this is, as we're talking about these AI columns, these smart AI fields that were mentioned, we'll automate this so you don't have to hand key these in. But that's really going to upskill and level the tools that you're having inside of the platform to start leveraging these things to make easier. So now you don't have a foreman or guy in the field having to draft out these paragraphs, getting the same kind of responses. They're not as boilerplate, falling on deaf ears, et cetera. You're getting more real-time contextual information to drive greater change and attention to those components. So that wraps up the primary content I have today to review. Just as a recap, we talked from how to take estimation information from on-screen takeoff and tools like Bluebeam, load that into Sheet and Smartsheet, aggregate and trans that with things like Pivot app, reference data with data tables, as well as bringing content back into the actual project lifecycle management, right? Field operations, managing schedules, RFIs, creating custom RFI templates, and more. And then wrapping that up even with tracking, spooling information, sending information from the guys in the field to speak and communicate with the shop, as well as the detailers in BIM, and then better ways to kind of report and analyze these portfolio informations for the projects over time. There's 1,000 more use cases, there's more advanced use cases, but hopefully this has inspired you to take some of these elements, incorporate in your solutions to start having more of a cohesive solution. Thank you for your time. I was asked to mention that there's a lunch breakout upstairs for construction specifically. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to field them here right now, and then we'll be up there to speak to you guys in person if you'd like.